Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week we're going to continue another video in the series of projects that sell. And this is a product that I make a lot of, really popular with wedding showers, wedding presents, and really taken off at Christmas time. So we're going to make two different styles of rolling pins. And you can make them out of any wood you have in your shop. You can make them fancy by laminating different colors together. This is just yellow birch laminated together. But say you can use any scrap wood that you have. Really you only need a blank that's 2.5 inches square. You know, this is 2 7/8, but it doesn't need to be this big. So what I've done, mark center on both ends, put a mark where my chuck would go on them, so that it has a good grip on the chuck and it doesn't spin on you. Slide the tailstock up. I've knocked the corners off on these with a table saw. You don't need to do that. If you don't have a table saw, you can turn them off. It doesn't make any difference, but it just saves a little time on the lathe. Now the first thing you want to do is make the whole thing round. And I'm looking down through my tool rest, and I'm lining it up with my bed rail as good as I can by eye. So if you can get that fairly straight and make the straightest cylinder that you can, it is helpful. More important when you're making the final cuts. So to start with, it's not as important. So we're going to turn this up pretty high speed. We're going to start it with the roughing gouge, spindle roughing gouge, and we're going to make this round, and we'll go from there. Like all the videos in this series, I'm going to do this in real time so you can see how long it takes to make them. It's a very easy product to make, and doesn't matter if you're a beginner or intermediate. It's quick and easy. And you don't need anything other than what came with your lathe. So I'm not using any 4-jaw chucks or anything, just a spur center and a live center in my tailstock. So this is the traditional handled rolling pin that I'm making first. The blank is 18 inches long. It's just a hair over 18 inches long actually. Okay, now that we have it round, and again this blank is just a little over, it's 18 1/4, so we're going to come in 3 1/8 inches on both ends. And we'll just mark that. We'll have to do this again, but it's important to get between these two lines in a perfect cylinder, so we're going to know where we have to go here. Now this is just the tool rest that came with my lathe. I do have an 18-inch tool rest, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use what would normally come with everyone's lathe. If you have an 18-inch tool rest, you won't have to move it. You can leave it in place and go end to end and not have to make any other adjustments. So again, I'm lining this up with my bed rails. That's pretty close. It's not perfect. Now, I take if you're good with a skew, you can do this really easily with a skew as well. Most intermediate and beginning turners aren't. I'm not good with a skew either, for that matter. So I use a scraper on this, and what I do is I lay my finger up into my tool rest. I set my chisel on the tool rest. I get my feet set so that I can hold this on my body and just move my body. So I'm not moving my left or right hand. I'm just basically going from one foot to the other, and holding this right down tight and in, not allowing it to go up or down or in or out, and I'm going to make a perfect cylinder out of this. Okay, so you can see we get a lot cleaner cut than we got with the roughing gouge now. I don't know where my other calipers are, so I've got a gigantic set of calipers. So what you want to do next is you want to measure the end, in the middle, and the other end. So I'm a little bit thick right here. I'm good in the middle, I'm good on this end. I got to take just a tiny bit more off of this. Now after you've got it that far, slide your tailstock up to your piece, and you can go now without using the bed rails. You can go by just a piece of wood. You know that you have to take a little bit off, so you're going to set your tailstock just a tiny bit closer on this side than the other side, which I just have done. Exactly the same technique, only coming across from the center out this time. So you just want to barely touch here. Okay, so I've locked these calipers. I know that I'm good here still. That's perfect right there. Now it's good right here as well. It's exactly what we want. All right. Now we're going to remark our 3 1/8 inch marks. Now we're going to turn the handle and the tailstock end first. And the reason you do the tailstock end first is that if you do the headstock end and make it smaller, you're more prone to getting vibration. So if you do it out here, you have much more meat back at the headstock. So you get a lot less vibration. So start out away from your line a little bit. Cut high to low. So what I do is I start to establish this cove here, and then I get about just a little past half of this 3 1/8 inch, so just a little bit past half, and then I start to taper from that not quite center point, just like I say, just a little bit beyond half. I start to taper that out to the tailstock, and then we're going to work it down a little smaller, and then when we get it down to the size that we want, then we're just going to round this edge from here in. Now we're just going to clean it up to our line. You can see that as we rounded this down, that part, that high point that was beyond center works its way closer to the barrel of the rolling pin. So that's a nice handle right there. That's going to feel good on your hands. Now all I'm going to do is take a small bowl gouge and I'm going to put a chamfer on the end of it. And what we're going to do when we're done is we're going to want to get rid of this chuck mark on each end. And so I'm going to put a chamfer on it and I'm going to come back about 3/16 of an inch and just cut a straight 45 in there. And now when we come back and cut this off, we're still going to have a little bit of that chamfer on there, so there won't be a sharp edge out on the edge. One of the nice things about this style of rolling pin, rather than the ones where you drill it through and put a metal shaft in and have two handles, is it's one glue up, it's one piece of wood, it's easy to do, and you don't have to, if you can't push it through your dough, you can turn it with your hand, and everyone who's gotten these from me really likes that. So I'm going to come back and do the other side exactly the same way. The nice thing of these is that one rolling pin doesn't need to be the same as the other. If the diameter is a little bit different on each one, the handle design is a little different each one, it doesn't make any difference as long as the handles are the same from end to end on the same pin. Alright, so now that we've got a rough handle on both sides and they're pretty close to the same profile, before I turn this down, I am going to take my calipers again. I'm going to measure the smallest part right here in the cove. So those are good. Then I'm going to measure the highest part. Okay, so I gotta take just a little bit more off of this one. And I'm also gonna measure back to the chamfer on this one. And I'm gonna come in on this one a little bit. So this is all the way too big from here back. So I just gotta take this a little more off of here. You don't want to take too much at a time, because if you get too much on this end, then you go back to the other end and start whittling it down and you'll run out of wood after a while. Okay, so we get this, the high part measured. We'll measure this one. Still just a hair too much. So I'm going to fix this first before I go to the outside edge. Still a hair too much. Now I'm going to open this up to this big one to see. I'm going to measure the big point here. Then I'm going to go to the other end and see how much I have to take off to get myself an idea. It is very little, actually. I guess it's all right. Okay, it's good. Now we're going to measure the small part out here again. Same place on this one. We're just holding in a little bit for that chamfer. It needs just a tiny bit off it. Before I measure this one, I'm going to cut the chamfer on it this time. Now we'll start sanding at 120 grit and only sand these to 320 because if they get too smooth then the flour won't stay on them and the dough sticks to them. So I just like to start in reverse. If you have a lathe that's reversible, when you start with your first grit, put your lathe in reverse. Remember to turn your RPM down when you're sanding. I am going to speed up the sanding in this video because no one wants to watch real-time sanding, I don't think. You can really speed up the sanding if you go along the grain. It's just enough to take out the circular sandpaper lines around the piece. Okay, now we're going to go 240 grit. Now I'm just going to knock the sanding dust off it just with a dry paper towel. It doesn't take much for this. It's very close grain wood, so you can see it's coming right off. Now again, we went reverse first grit toward a second grit. We're going to go reverse on the last grit. So lots of people ask me questions in comments about these things on what I sell these for. If you're selling these at a Christmas craft show or something like that, you can sell them for $50 a piece, like 2 for 40, but right in that range. And again, if you got any flat stock in your shop that's cutoffs from other projects and things like that, it's your upfront cost for your wood's inexpensive. Okay, just gonna wipe the dust off one more time. Now the finish I like to put on these, it is a friction. It's a wax, hot wax. I use the middle color. There's a darker and there's a lighter. For yellow birch, I like to use this color. It's food safe. It's just beeswax, carnauba wax, and a friction polish. You turn your lathe speed up, hold the bar on, let it melt in, buff it in with a cloth, and I'll show you how that goes. I'm just going to stop this and show you how this looks like when it's on. It looks terrible, but it's got a good, you see it's got a nice distribution of wax all the way over. And you're going to want to take your paper towel to buff this in with, same as most finishes. You're going to want to have at least 4 ply because this stuff's going to get hot if you're melting wax, so maybe make it 8 ply, we'll double it up. Again, at high speed. Okay, that puts on a really durable, really nice finish. And everyone who has one of these, not everyone, but anyone who has given me any feedback, they love the finish. They work really well for them. So that's how easy it is to make one of these. Now what I do with the rest of it, I just take this off. Now you can do it a bunch of ways. I just take it, I have a vertical belt sander and a disc sander, and I just take that in and I go by the line of where the chamfer is so I know that I'm doing a square, and I just run it, hold it on the bed with a piece of paper towel under it so it doesn't scratch, and I just slide it in and sand it off, and I'll show you that after a bit here. Now the next one that we're going to make is a less popular style where I live, but it is a pretty popular style in some places. So we're going to make a French rolling pin. Okay, so I was talking to a camera that wasn't on there. So anyway, same process as the last one, we made it round. You'll notice it's smaller diameter than the other one. French rolling pins are smaller diameter. And I'll give you the finished measurement of the barrel and the taper when we're done. So like the last one, we're gonna want 12 inches in the center that's actually flat rolling pin, and then we're gonna taper the outsides. So that leaves us 5 inches on both ends that we're gonna use for a taper. We'll mark 5 inches in from both sides. And you don't actually need to mark it. I like to. You don't have to. You can do it. You can just true it the whole thing up if you want to. I just find this is quicker. So once again, I'm lining up my bed rails to my tool rest. Okay, so once again, we're gonna go measure this barrel. This side. Measure the center. Gotta take just a hair off of the center. And just a hair off this side. Very seldom get it perfect the first time. Okay, so again, I'm just setting this now so I have a little bit more gap on this end than this end, not a lot more because I'm pretty close. Don't run your chisel off the end of your tool rest like that, that's not good. Set this down and bump it. Gotta read. Start here. Alright, so there we go. Center is good. The outside edge is good. Alright, so now we're all set. Put our 5-inch marks back on again. So we know where we're going from. We don't want to touch that barrel. Now, you set your tool rest to the taper that you're going to want on the end. I didn't like this one, it was a little too thick, so I decided I would make the barrel a little bit smaller so that the tapers would be smaller as well. And rather than go through the exact same thing I just did, I just sped this part up. Now on these ones, we're going to round this edge over more than the other. Not just a chamfer, we're actually going to round it down some. So I'll bring you over here a little closer. There we go.
Alright, so rather than showing you full turn of both ends, we had the same diameter at the black line, and we're cutting a straight line for the taper, so we just have to make sure that the diameter at the end is exactly the same on both sides, and that's all that there is to really cutting these tapers. And the trick to getting it right is to set your tool rest to the taper angle that you want, and use the same technique as you did on the barrel. Just take your scraper and run it straight across. Don't bury in or out.
Alright, I'm going to sand this up off camera because you don't need to see me sand another one. And then we'll just do the ends up on both of them and I'll show you that. And also I'll put the finish on as well so you can see that again for anyone who isn't used to hot wax. Alright, so I'm ready to put hot wax on this now. The barrel measurement on this is 2 inches, just a tiny shade over 2 inches. And for anyone who's interested, the barrel on the other rolling pin is just around 2.5. So that is a really fast and easy and food safe finish, and it is durable. Okay, I'll take these over to the sander. I'll show you how we take the ends off them.
This is a much longer video than I normally put out, and I did want to show most of the non-repetitious aspects of making each of these 2 rolling pins. So if you're still with me, thanks so much for sticking around. Thanks again to everyone who subscribes to the channel. I really do appreciate that, and also appreciate everyone who watches the videos. If you watched this and liked it and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. And leave a comment, and a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let me know if you didn't like the video, what you didn't like, so I can work to improve. And as always, there'll be a few stills up at the end.
Alright, so I just sand them to the chuck marks are gone. Then I just take a little bit of salad bowl oil, put it on a paper towel, and I just treat the ends with a little bit of that so that they're not dry. And you can see that to get the chuck marks out, you really do take off most of that chamfer. So if you want more chamfer on the end, you can turn it back a little bit farther. I usually just leave enough just so that there's not a sharp edge here. And it's the exact same process with the other one, so as you saw. Alright, that's all there is to it. We'll see you next time.